Hi, welcome to Unicorn Studio. In this video, we're going to create a scene that hopefully shows you some of the basics and some of the cool things you can do with the tool. This is the final result. I'm going to just delete the whole thing and we're going to start fresh. And at the end, we'll embed it into a Framer site. So first, we're going to add some text. Here we have our layers. Everything renders in order from bottom up. I'm going to go to my detail panel and pick a cool font. And this is going to be for some design studio website. So we'll just call it a creative design studio. So everything here is WYSIWYG. It should feel like a design tool that you're used to. Just going to make this relative here because we want it to scale well as we change our screen size. And I'm also going to make the font relative, and that makes everything else relative too. So as you can see, it scales down nicely automatically without me having to change it. These are actual breakpoints that we can use to change the layers or the effects based on those screen sizes. That's also available to us if we need it. But yeah, let's keep making this look good. And then lastly, we'll throw on an anchor point. So this lets you control how the positioning of the element changes as the screen size changes. So if we want to do bottom left, for example, and left aligned, you can see that little indicator here shows me that it's anchor bottom left. It will stay there in that position as we change the screen size. So that comes in handy as you're working with different layouts on your website. But we will go bottom center for this one. I'm going to center it up vertically here. Okay, so that's my base layer here. And for this one, I'm going to show off some events as well, so that when we load the page, we can have some cool effects play. I'm going to go into my effect bank here. This is where we can choose from one of more than 50 different effects that do all kinds of cool stuff. And you can configure them with tons of options. I'm going to choose this one called Vignette, which lets me control a sort of aperture kind of effect here. But I don't want it to just look like this. I want it to have some kind of organic watercolor splash kind of look. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. But in order to affect just the effect and not the whole scene, let's say I put FBM on top, it's going to affect everything underneath it too. And I only want to affect the vignette. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete this too. And I'm going to teach you a useful trick, which is, it's basically groups. There is no native grouping in Unicorn Studio right now, but we can use these shapes to act like a group. And I'm going to fit it to the whole artboard. So this is a fresh shape, which is just black. But if I go over top here, I can add an effect to it. And actually, I want to make this white. And so this vignette is only affecting the shape, but then when I use the shape, I have everything else available. So I can do blend modes. So now we have the same thing I had before, but I can add an effect in my shape. You know, I could just call this group. I can add the FBM effect on top. So any text layer or shape or image can have child effects, but in this case, I'm using this as a group for several effects that stack on top of each other. So now you see I have this FBM, which is only manipulating the vignette. So that's exactly what I want. And what I want to happen is when we load the page for it to fully expand, like it's kind of bleeding ink or something. So for that, we're going to use one of our 3 events. This one will be appear, so that it happens when the page loads or when the scene enters the viewport. So I'm going to choose the radius, which is the property we want to manipulate. Make start value 0, end value high, make it something like that. And I can choose from these different transitions here. Let's do something like that. Great. And you know what? I'm going to actually make that pretty long. That looks pretty good. And also down here, you can see that now that I've added an appear event, I have the timeline available to me, which comes in handy when I've got multiple appear effects across different effect layers or element layers. I can see how they all kind of play together. Let's add another event on top of this. We can do something cool like have this video. This is just the stock link here, and we can do that using blend modes here, just like we did with the group. I'm going to choose subtract. If I just do multiply, it's a little bit too dark. I want this video to fade in after my initial ink bleed effect happens. So for that, I'm going to have a start value of 0 for the opacity, and then I'm going to move it so that it starts a little bit later. Maybe bump it up a little bit here. And then we're going to add some interactivity. I'm going to use this bulge effect. You can see it's manipulating in kind of a 3D way the texture here, the whole scene. So most effects have this interactivity panel down here where it will track the mouse in some way. This one is a very specific mouse tracking, it's obvious, but others like noise, FBM, for example, also has a mouse tracking effect that affects its position and can let you do all kinds of cool stuff. But this one, pretty straightforward. It looks like that, and I don't want the light to be visible before the whole scene is. You can see it there. So I'm going to do one more event. I might even just fade in the amount of the bulge. So let that come in once our scene is kind of loaded, and then we can play with it. Let's start it here. Oops. I don't want 0, I want 50, because you can bulge inward as well. All right, cool. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go and update. We already started this and I've published it already, but this is where you publish the scene, and we can choose any of these ways that we want to embed it. Iframe, I would say, is good for testing, but I don't recommend it, using that in production for various reasons. It's slower, some of the events don't work. This is just like a basic vanilla JavaScript embed. To use in your site. You could put it directly in a code block in Webflow or something, but there's better ways to do that. And then this is the link for the framer component. So I'm going to go over here where I have this very bare bones portfolio website, but the hero is going to be this scene that I just made. So I just pasted in that link into Framer, and I'm going to make this just 100% of the height of the viewport here. I'm going to move this frame down as well. So you won't see your scene render in the canvas when you're editing and even preview, just because of the way this stuff renders and re-renders. Like, it's not going to work perfectly in the basic preview here. But, oh, I actually forgot to paste my project ID. So I'm going to go back and grab that right up here. And there it is. So you need to publish to your staging link to see how it looks. But hopefully it just looks good right off the bat. And yeah, maybe our text is a little too high here. But just update. And there we have it. Here is our scene live on our site. Hopefully that was helpful and informative. And there's lots more to cover, but happy unicorning. Thanks. Bye.